Well, hi kids. Now chances are you found this video through a search, so skip ahead to the time on the screen for a brief tour of the Wonder AI app, or if you want some tips on how to write your prompts, skip to the second time. Wonder AI is an easy entry-level option to AI image generation that gives good results. Easy and good, those words are subjective, so this is my opinion, and obviously I can't try every alternative that exists out there. I'm not even interested in trying to do that. Besides, it will change. Now, I really debated whether or not to make this video. I get nothing from it, and I'm certainly not an ambassador for Wonder. This is not my app. If you need tech support, there's an email in the app. Wonder has a paid subscription and a free trial with annoying ads. It's got some unsavory cash grab aspects to it. And it's not even a full-featured image generator. I'm not exactly praising it, but I do keep using it almost daily. And that is maybe more telling than me explaining the pros and cons. If you already are using Automatic 1111's Web UI for Stable Diffusion, there's no reason to switch. If you're on a newer Mac or iOS device with the M1 or M2 processor, Draw Things is grown-up Stable Diffusion optimized for the Apple hardware. It's free on the App Store. Those are my two options I would recommend if someone wanted to know the best full-featured tools for AI art to run at home on their computer. Now, I haven't tried a lot of those services or Google Colab, so I can't compare to those. So back to Wonder AI. If I'm not trying to hype it, why would I make this video? Well, there didn't seem to be any other tutorials for using Wonder. That's despite it being very popular on the App Store. Maybe it's so easy that it doesn't need a tutorial. Now, if you follow my channel, you probably know that there's a story coming. And again, if you just want a prompt tutorial, this is your last chance to skip to the end. You don't need to know this backstory, but I think it is relevant. The AI that you keep hearing about on TV, especially the financial networks, is the AI owned by Microsoft and Google. But the company that is getting sued is Stability AI because they gave this technology away as open source, which has allowed dozens, maybe hundreds of small online startups to offer AI image generation to the masses in whatever way they can figure out to reach customers. In other words, Stability AI is using open source and market capitalism to defeat monopolies like Microsoft and Google. Now, the fact that the monopolies are being hailed uncritically daily on the financial networks for products they haven't even released, while the company that is actually driving entrepreneurship is being sued, most would say frivolously, should tell you who controls the narrative. Whether you agree with my interpretation or not, the fact is Stability AI has created a boom in these AI apps and web services and even free home downloads if you're a bit geeky and willing to put all the parts together. Wonder AI's niche is Stable Diffusion for dummies. And that's not a bad thing. It's the democratization of this technology. If you're a casual creator or just a normal person, you don't have all day to compare obscure train spotter settings, run background terminal commands, and download the latest GitHub repositories. By the way, those hot rodders are downloading 30 to 40 to 50 gigs of training models. That's in addition to the 7 gig base model, and they're just making waifu porn. These are their life choices, not mine. So Wonder AI is maybe the option if you're normal. Maybe you're an author and you need an artsy cover or your book or an illustration for your blog. Maybe you're a musician and you want a promo image for your single or your album, or you just enjoy remixing visual media and pop culture. All of this is a great niche for AI art generation. and exploration. If you go in not too sure what you're looking for, AI image generation is a lot of fun, especially if you're a writer and you like word puzzles and you have maybe an interest in cultural ephemera. Now, where AI image generation falls short is when you need to render something specific and then you are standing at a gumball slot machine that's giving you every flavor of jelly bean except the one that you need. And that's when AI is just terrible. You need to stop and get a real artist. If you are a real artist, then you already know that this technology is impressive, it's exciting, but it's very much in its infancy. So while I feel AI art is great fun, and I'm able to use it to add to my main art, like this pool background behind me, I am very skeptical of AI as a production tool, at least right now. And that's maybe the reason I'm not all that into the big grown-up stable diffusion with all the bells and whistles. If I'm just getting random images anyway, and my option is basically to take them or leave them, my ego doesn't need the pretense of all these settings. If it's not real control over the image, it's just knob twiddling. You know, I drive a car just fine, but I don't crawl under the hood and calibrate the engine. It should just be set by a professional so I can get on with driving the car. Now that brings me back to Wonder AI, and you might have guessed it, this is not a simp channel. I try to say the bad along with the good. Wonder AI's interface looks like crap. To be fair, Automatic 1111's UI makes my eyes bleed. Even the other app I mentioned, Draw Things, has an interface that looks like the stats page on a Japanese RPG from the early 90s. Where's Kai Cruz to come along and give Stable Diffusion a better interface? Kai, we need you. What happened to millennial design values where things looked friendly and were fun to use? Well, Wonder looks like a WebKit app. I don't think they spent much time on it. But if you're a grandma, if you're a nun, if you're a stay-at-home dad, what do they call those? Not starfishes, not sea lions. Anyway, whoever you are, you can get past this uninspired interface and still have fun. It's not confusing. There are no settings to get wrong. In fact, there's no settings at all. They've set up some models, or what the app calls styles, for you to use right away. Pick a logical style because it will influence how your image looks, but this is not like StyleGAN. This is AI generation, so a lot of concepts and associations are wrapped up inside each model. But there are no other settings, no CFG, no steps, no mystery tokens. You don't even get to select the random seed. But with unlimited renders in your subscription, just render it again and again. And again, it's a gotcha mechanic, a Kinder Egg dispenser. There's no limit to the number of renders with a subscription, which is a good thing because, wow, this will trigger every gambling impulse, all your OCD. You will keep going back to pull that lever, hoping to get that perfect peanut out of the machine. Consider yourself warned. Now here's your walkthrough. Pick one of these ratios, just type or paste in the text field for your prompt, and that's it. Pure prompt to AI image generation, equivalent to browsing Tumblr or Google to search for images, except here you're generating them on Wonder's server before downloading. Wonder won't run down your mobile battery, your phone doesn't overheat because you're not really doing anything computational locally, and you do need an internet connection. Now there's also an image-to-image function, but it's pretty limited without in-painting or out-painting, or even a strength setting. It can turn your sketch into an image, or your image into a sketch, or your 3D art into a painting. But this is not a Lensa selfie kind of dream booth thing. If you input a selfie, you will not recognize the person that comes out. Again, control is just through your text prompts. You get a random seed every time. So you'll also get a random human from your image to image every time. So why am I using Wonder when my grown-up Stable Diffusion is free and sitting unopened on my PC? Well, I'll give you one quick analogy and then we'll get to my prompt tutorial. You know those people who buy a full DSLR camera with all the different lenses and millions of settings and meters, and the aperture is real sexy on the outside of the lens, and then they end up leaving that camera set to automatic? And it's a big camera for serious photography. It's not the camera that you take to a party, maybe not even the one you take on vacation. Instead, you take the little point and shoot camera with the one button on top. Or more likely, you just use your phone because that's already in your pocket and it just works and it's small and you actually get the photo because it wasn't a massive production every time you pull it out of the bag with the swappable lenses and all that. Yes, the big boy camera is better, but there's a lot going on that isn't necessarily about taking pictures. So sometimes easy gets the job done, and that's the niche that Wonder seems to fit for me. Now, if you're new to AI generation, Wonder is a safe option because you spend the money up front on a subscription. It's easy to cancel through the App Store. There's no hidden token fees, no privacy surcharge. So I've been setting Wonder's server on fire for the last 3 to 4 months. I render as much as I want, which is a lot. Now, without the bigger geek community discussing technical stuff, there's a lot of misconceptions about what's going on when you use Wonder AI. I'm not going to get technical, it's just that AI art is kind of a parlor trick that goes on behind a curtain, and that leads to some false ideas of how all this works. So you're not training your own personal AI when you download and reject images. You're not training the AI. It's already been trained. It's Stable Diffusion running on a cloud server. Now the app that's on your phone functions like a web portal, like Midjourney does. You send text prompts up to the server. The server sends back image previews in real time as they build from literal noise. That's how these diffusers work. It's amazing. It's the future. Now you get 2 previews at a time. That's it. Get over it. Decide to download them, upscale them, probably again another 2 times, or regenerate or edit your prompt. That's all you get to do. Wonder also forces you to hit the original button to not get their watermark, even if you have paid for the app. And you have to do that every time, every download, because clearly the devs feel that they need to milk this cow as fast as they can. So if you maybe forget to remove the watermark and then accidentally post it on your social, they get some free advertising from you. Now, what you are paying for is the time spent rendering on the cloud server. For me, this works out because I generate and discard a lot of images while I'm refining a prompt. I bought a lifetime subscription, and no joke, I've saved over 20,000 images in about 3.5 months. That is insane. There's no telling how many images I generated and discarded. Geometrically more than that. Now you can do the math comparing those other subscription services to what I spent on Wonder. I think Wonder has lost money on me, but your mileage will vary. There's a free trial with ads, but the subscription I paid for was around $30 for a lifetime. Now I honestly doubt that I will be using this app for my lifetime. Maybe I could have saved a few dollars and just bought it for 1 year. And because I kind of picture in like another 8 months, there's going to be more options out there, and I'm going to shop around and I'm going to look for, I'm going to look for AI options that are a little more full-featured probably. And I don't consider Wonder as my high-end AI app. But I should go ahead and disclose that while I was writing this script over the weekend, they upgraded from Stable Diffusion 1.5 to 2 point something. And there was about a day when the images all looked terrible, but they got it under the hood, they tweaked the settings, and now it's looking better. Different, but better. And this is the downside of not being in control of your own copy of Stable Diffusion. Someone else controls it, and they get to tweak it whenever they want on their schedule. Now, typically I get my previews back in less than 10 seconds, maybe 15 seconds on a slow day, but I can see how it's going before that and cancel out with this back arrow if I'm feeling really impatient. And in my opinion, that is the feature that I'm paying for, speed and convenience. I can sit on the couch in an internet cafe and chill. I like to play with prompts. I like the convenience of my iPad, although Wonder doesn't even give me an iPad app. It's just the iPhone version running on the iPad in a skinny window. I like to step away from the computer to be creative. So again, your mileage may vary. I also have image editing through other apps on my iPad. So it's a whole creative environment. I recommend PixArt, which is more pricey, but it has some great AI-driven tools to fix the images. PixArt even has Stable Diffusion in it, but the prompts are way too censored, even for me. I don't make that much smut. But it seemed like every other word was banned. It was hard to even describe a person without violating something in PixArt. So Wonder is still a little bit censored, but a little more permissive. So I'll get to that in a minute. Now, let's be clear. You will be getting a lot of bad images. AI is random, and they can't all be bangers. Now, without any extra control, all you have is the prompt. But my premise here, if you will, is that those controls are kind of useless. I don't mean the in-painting and the big features like that. I just mean the calibration parameters. Just set them to the optimal settings and get on with it. In my opinion, the prompt is everything. That's the real control. So the rest of this video is a quick primer on how to write a great prompt for Wonder AI and Stable Diffusion in general, I suppose. Now, there's a limit to how many words you can type into Wonder, and it still give you those words back in your image. Wonder allows you to type extra, but you should always be playing bingo with your prompts, checking your words, making sure it's showing up in the image. If you don't see what you typed, you need to fix your prompt. English grammar works best, and around half of the AI understanding of language is English, with the other half being all other languages combined. So it's very English dominant. If you're not a native English speaker, try prompts in your native tongue, but maybe also fall back to English if you have the vocabulary. Now, write your prompt as if it's a caption for the image, just plainly describing the objects and the qualities of the image as if it's the alternate text caption for someone who can't see it. The AI will interpret your text, as AIs do, and then it will generate the things that you wrote, but by randomizing associated items from its neural network. Your text doesn't need to be complete sentences, so drop all the little useless words like a and the, and try to stick with adjective, noun phrases like big brown dog, skinny red-headed man. Wonder allows you to pile up these adjectives. I can use like 5 or so in a row and still get a working prompt, but that's kind of pushing it. There's a grammar rule in English for putting a long string of adjectives in a specific order. If you follow this rule, Wonder can usually understand most of it. Now, I separate each phrase or each big concept with a comma, and with each short phrase as sort of a compartmentalized idea. I try to keep it down to 4 or 5 main phrases, but sometimes, honestly, it just becomes a kind of keyword list. Now, those sections are media, subject, details and textures, the background, and some descriptive qualities of the image, like the color palette, or the lighting. Since this is language, there's a lot of flexibility in how things are phrased, but the absolute rule is that whatever comes first is the dominant composition of the image. Therefore, I put the media first. Now, if you want something that looks like a painting, the first phrase should describe a painting, maybe including the general composition and style. A lot of people like to use the phrase painting by blah blah, artist's name. But I find that to be really inconsistent and sometimes overpowering. The AI doesn't have a consistent concept of any specific artist. It can't mimic their specific art style. What it has is a neural network of certain terms, including dry art terms like charcoal sketch or stippled brushwork or ink and oil illustration. Now, any particular artist's name might be associated with many of these kind of dry art terms, but also with other artists who did work in the same style or around the same time period. A neural network is like one of those thought maps, mind maps. Do you remember those? Where words link to other words. Now, dry vocabulary can give you a specific effect, while an artist's name might tie you into an entire genre or art movement. Actually, I prefer to use the names of art movements rather than specific artists because I'm usually going for a genre and mood rather than some specific person. But to the AI, there's no meaningful difference to these words. The textbook art terms can be too subtle, even though they're the most accurate. They give you what you ask for, but it's just not that exciting. Some artists' names bring a lot of associated concepts with it, and while other artists aren't as interconnected in the neural network, they might contribute one small effect, assuming the AI even knows their name at all. That means some names will do a lot, some names don't do much at all, and some do weird things that make no sense when you know the real artist's style. Now, the power names are called superconnectors, and it has honestly nothing to do with how good the artist was or how important in history. It's often quirks of the training data. Some names are overrepresented and overconnected, but as a result, they give more interesting surprises and seemingly more sophisticated images. Don't confuse that with the AI actually doing something in the style of the actual artist. At the same time, don't keep using one artist's name over and over. You're in a rut. You won't get new things. There's a whole landscape to explore inside these neural networks. It's all just word association games and random numbers, and you don't get much meaningful control over it. This is why people train their own models, like a dream booth, to get those specific looks and art styles. Wonder's styles are essentially different trained models. Their names suggest what kind of imagery they were trained on, and you can deselect the style to see how the AI would interpret the prompt without the extra training influence. Now that brings me to the next section of the prompt, the subject. This is where we try to impose a very specific object as the focus of the composition. It might be a person or a thing or maybe a character described in as much detail as we can fit. But remember, we have to get the important ideas first and earlier in the prompt. It will make errors if you tell it red hair and blue shirt. You will sometimes get a blue hair and a red shirt. This isn't foolproof and it's intentionally random. This is part of the design feature. Now be aware there's no spell checker in Wonder AI. And there are plenty of words the AI simply doesn't understand or misinterprets in context. If you don't see the items, make sure the prompt is spelled correctly and makes grammatical sense. Also try different words. Wonder does block certain words to get a G rating on the App Store, but Wonder is more permissive than some others that I tried. Internet slang works too. Works pretty well. Now that said, let's be frank about not safe for work images that you're going to try to render with Wonder. and probably involving celebrities. Yes, you can do that kind of stuff. No, it's never going to be explicit or anatomically correct, but you can certainly do suggestive things. Just keep it to yourself. It's cool. Just keep it to yourself. You don't even need to save it. You could just generate it again later from the prompt, fresh every time. The thrill is in the chase, not in hoarding. I'm just saying. Now, just mentioning something in the subject might change the framing or the blocking of the composition. Man with red hair should get us the hair. Man with red hair and black boots should show us the hair and the boots and presumably the rest of the man in between, although this doesn't always work. If you're using photographic or cinematographic media, you can try camera terms in your subject like medium close-up to try to reframe the subject within the composition. This doesn't work so well with paintings, so I sometimes need to suggest portrait or a similar art term, and I put that up in the media section along with the painting description. You really have to play around with how these words work in context. Now, how long and how detailed can the subject phrase be? You'll have to play around, but at some point it will get too long and the prompt will just break. You won't be able to see the subject in the image. When that happens, you guessed it, go back, edit the prompt, separate the concepts with commas, check your spelling, check your grammar. Now the next section is all the important bits that I could not figure out how to get into the subject line without it becoming ungrammatical. Sometimes my subject is just so overwrought that I just have to break it up into short comma lists, and that works better. Remember, when I say something works better, I'm not saying you will be dazzled by fine art results. I'm saying that the AI will make an attempt to include it in the image. Seriously, you'll need to render again and again to get what you want, and then pick the best of like 7 or 8, 10 images that you saved on your computer or on your phone. You know, the ones that actually worked. You might as well view the items listed in your prompt with each having a random likeliness of showing up. That's really how this is working. If you can connect them all into one continuous phrase, you're more likely to get all of those things together. Sometimes it's just not practical, so you got to break them up into a comma list. Now, the details is often the thing I'm spending a lot of time and variations on. You can describe details of the clothes, the fabrics, even the materials of objects like worn leather, brass buttons, dirty glass windows, cracked wall paint. You go to town. Indulge your inner author. Now, the next section I do is the background. Basically, objects that need to be in the background. They sometimes end up in the section above, the details. I try to work some of the background into the main composition description, but that doesn't always work, so sometimes I just put the whole background here after I've described the subject. Conversely, if my background isn't showing up, I need to work it into the main composition phrase somehow, and then I leave the details of the background here. Now, in my opinion, you didn't ask, but you're getting it, AIs are better at rendering convincing backgrounds and inanimate objects than they are at rendering people. I know that won't stop you from trying. As you can see, I am not using AI to animate people. I'm using 3D to animate people. I just think it's better. So I do try to keep the subject and background separated, at least as concepts, separated by commas. And again, based on what kind of artwork you're doing, you're going to be more subject focused, you're going to be more all holistically focused, or you're just really after those detailed backgrounds. Now, the last section I call the image qualities, and this includes mood and tonal concepts like lighting descriptions and maybe color palettes. And these tend to show up even though they're down at the end of the prompt, I think because they aren't attached to any particular object in the scene. In a photographic style, shallow depth of field and bokeh, those go here. Sometimes I put the time of day here, mid-afternoon, or what is that one that people like, that golden hour, sunset. But if it's more consistent if I put the time of day higher up, like maybe in the media or the subject line. Now, a lot of people copy and paste terms from high-end render engines like global illumination, ray traced shadows, maybe 4K, and these render qualities also belong here, as well as things like light bloom and lens fog from photography. For ethereal looks, I sometimes use a pastel palette or the phrase white palette. It's not all white, but it will look white and kind of washed out. And even dark horror movie palette. Get creative. Now I also can put in lighting cues like 3-point lighting, diva solo lighting, noir lighting. That's a big one. Use that all the time. Noir lighting. Colorful edge lighting. A little bit more sci-fi and exciting. Don't use more than one lighting term. They actually accumulate. So don't describe a whole bunch of lights in your prompt one after another. You'll just end up with a bright, overlit scene. Now, one last note about Wonder AI. There's a paid Lensa type of feature where you can upload your selfies and you get back pre-rendered generic AI generated selfies. Don't do this. I had terrible results. There's no control over it. They don't even check if the settings are overtraining your face. You don't even get to add prompts. Just ignore this. You don't need it. I think that's my review and discussion and tutorial. So just to recap, I'm not recommending that you buy Wonder AI. I'm just telling you the niche it fits for me and my explanation for why I seem to prefer using Wonder over Homebrew Stable Diffusion. I think Wonder's approach is interesting. I definitely do not explore text prompts in the same way when I have a jillion other parameters to tweak in Stable Diffusion. And maybe that's why I'm not that excited by the things I generate there. I seem to get better results in Wonder, and maybe it's really all about the prompts. Now, I assume your needs will be unique to you, and your balance and tolerance for the geek end of this technology is also unique to you. I'm not judging you when I say this app is for dummies, and it might be for you. Remember, I'm including myself in the dummies. I don't think I'm a dummy, but I do have a low tolerance for stuff that wastes my time. I want results for the money, and the time is money. Now, I downloaded Wonder and I was hooked almost right away. It's not the best, but it's maybe the easiest, and it's pretty good. I still say the real appeal for me is the speed and the unlimited generations, but I also believe that honing in on the prompts is an aspect that seems to be ignored by everyone else in their AI videos. The tools we use shape the art that we make and how we express ourselves. I'm not so into generic anime waifus, so maybe I just don't see the appeal in rendering the same boring generic waifu over and over and over with slightly different settings. There is so much more in these neural networks to explore. Vintage photography, fashion from the 1960s. just follow your dream. And use the tools that are facilitating those dreams and you're having fun with. Stay creative, kids. I'm Wet Circuit. This is Cutscene Artist. If you subscribe, I will see you next time.